Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Ekunkoya, and it's a pleasure to be here with you to share with you some of my perspectives on money from my experience. I have had both corporate experience in multinational FMCG for about 18 years, but I've done work in finance and project management and strategy. My discipline is finance as well, a qualified accountant. I've also, studied economics at the university, and I've been fortunate in the last 2 years to have set up my own consultancy, managing several projects and then providing strategic guidelines to several clients. But the benefit is I've been able to see, the other side of the coin, which is the real world, which I would say has been quite harsh and hectic considering COVID and just the dynamics of how to do business in Nigeria. But those experiences, I would say, have been invaluable, and I will be bringing that to bear, in the next 45 minutes when we just talk about, how do we deal with money wounds. When I saw this topic, I smiled because I was like, yeah, you cannot avoid money wounds. I mean, the only way to avoid money wounds is not to invest your money, because risk and returns are inversely proportional. And if you want returns, you cannot afford not to take risk. In that light, the question or the conversation will be focused on how do we make more informed financial management decisions? What are the pitfalls that we need to avoid to lose money significantly? And how do we ensure that we safeguard our financial resources so that we can all experience what I call like financial freedom? If we go to the Bible, if you remember the parable of the talents, and Jesus was talking about 3 servants, and one was given 5 talents, one was given two, and one was given one. If we look at those talents as money, the servant that was rebuked was the one that dug the soil and put their money there. And the reason is because if you don't invest money, you cannot multiply money. And just by the sheer nature of the fact that there's inflation, money loses value over time. So, I mean, depending on what currency you store money, multiplying money is just one significant way to ensure that your wealth is preserved. More importantly, when I look at my experiences, definitely life is like a wave. We make money sometimes, we lose money sometimes. What's important is not to lose the lesson from when you don't make money or when you lose money. And the reason is, if you don't lose the lesson, then it could be worse. I had a bad business decision that I made, some months ago, and then it was quite, a difficult time for me, in dealing with. But what was comforting when I spoke to some of my mentors and then those that had more experience with me, and they were like, you cannot be in business and not lose money. It's like part of the game. What's important is when you think about the big picture, you want to be making money. And they warned me and said, it's a good thing you lost this at this stage. If you haven't, it could have been worse. It could have been 10 times more. And then that kind of got me really humbled. So please pay attention to these nuggets I want to share. We might just be, rescuing someone's business, or, I don't want to say saving a life. So what are some of the common mistakes that we make when it comes to money? I cannot exhaust that, but I will just share a few, that I feel are very relevant, to those that are listening. The first is when you're spending excessively and frivolously, when your lifestyle is consumption driven. If you think about it, for every time we earn money, there are different things we want to use it for. There's capital expenditure that money would be spent on, things like houses and cars. There is recurring expenditure, or you can call it expenses, your bills, those things that come, like often feeding, transportation, like basics. And there's also sometimes the need to make investments, and those investments come in different forms. There's also a need for saving, and there's a need for residual income, which is your sort of your fallback plan or your contingency in case there's an emergency. Now, if the percentages are not right, and there's no rule, they're only guides. If you're spending more on liabilities than you're spending on assets, if you're spending more on your immediate needs than you're spending into the future, which is investing, then you might be on a bad trail. And that's how people get into a lot of trouble. What happens is then they get very pressured and desperate because you need to keep up with that lifestyle. And then it forces you to start doing things, either fraudulent things or start taking more risky decisions that then makes you lose more money, and then it becomes a vicious cycle. So it's something we need to be mindful of. Another very, very bad, mistake that people make regarding money is not saving or investing sufficiently. There's this saying for people in paid employment, 30 days make one pay. You're living from paycheck to paycheck. If you don't have residual income, if you don't have, the thing is, there's a law, it's called Parkinson's. Your expenses will always rise to meet your income. If you're earning 10 times what you're earning today, you will still have expenses that can fill up that income. So saving is more of a discipline, it's more of a habit. It's not about I have money or I don't have money. So if you've not cultivated the habit of making investments, that's another mistake people make. Critically is, knowledge is power. Many people are ignorant of financial management. If you're not feeling well, you'll go to a hospital. If you want to construct a house, you go to, an architect, or a developer. When you want to invest your money, who do you go to? There are experts, that you can consult, meet with, and say, I need guidance. I want to understand, portfolio. I want to understand risk. I want to understand, different investment options. If you don't seek, financial advice, it's very you're very prone to making decisions that might either be driven by your emotions or driven by ignorance, which at the end of the day can land you into a place where you don't want to be. Another important thing that mistakes people make is not structuring transactions properly. This is business, right? Not structuring. I mean, and then life is guided by principles. There's a due diligence required before you do a transaction. There's a documentation required before you do a transaction. You get into a transaction without due diligence, without documentation. It's like telling a mechanic to fly plane. So you want to be able to say, what are the potential pitfalls? What can go wrong in this transaction? What do I need to be mindful of? What do I need to watch out for? And then when you go through that process, you realize that you make a better informed decision regarding investment. Investment and risk are Simon's twins. Even the fact that we wake up every morning, there's always a probability that you go out and then you don't even know what you meet when you go out. So risk is a part of life. And some risk we know, some we don't know. So managing risk, mitigating risk is what we need to. You cannot completely avoid risk because risk is a given. So when risk is not calculated, when you're not sure and you're not making the right decisions around who do you trust, and then that's a big potential pitfall. You want to do business with either institutions, you want to do business with people that even though you have a relationship with, you know about their integrity, their character. Those things are very critical. Things to avoid. Another thing to be careful of is get rich quick syndromes and Ponzi schemes. Money doubling scams. In fairness, if I can double money, why do I want you to come and join me in doubling money? If I really knew, it's just like, would you go call your neighbors if you found gold in your backyard to say, hey, come, I found gold, let's share? So sometimes some things are just common sense. When somebody is telling you that, if you give me 10 naira, I can give you 20 naira. I'll ask, how long have you been doing this? If you've been doing it for so long, why are you asking for my money? If you've been doubling your money by now, you should have enough money. I mean, at some point, I'll stop taking debt because I would have built my capital base to be able to finance the kind of investments I want to do. Finally, there's some bad habits that really, really can destroy your financial, future. A good example is being a shopaholic. Some people just buy things on the spur, whether they need it or not. And it's a bad habit, but excess is bad in anything. That's gambling, the house always wins. In a gambling, there's always a probability. It's less people make money than, those that lose. So, and you can never really tell when you're taking a bet, where the coin will land. So, imagine people gambling away their houses, people gambling away their retirement, fortunes. So gambling really is a bad habit. I mean, things like drugs and addictions, because these things, they're there because they take your money, excessive drinking, excessive clubbing, whatever it is, a love for cars. So anything that is a bad habit or anything that is an excess in itself can be a very bad mistake to make for managing your money. I mean, we need to be mindful of those things. So, I mean, I know that there could be a lot more, but in the context of how do you avoid wounds or how do you manage wounds or deal with wounds, if you mind those things, you've started making the right steps in the direction to getting yourself out of, a negative. It comes to understanding how to